right, let's get started. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this month's forecasting forum. And as always, we're going to start with a couple of questions before we jump in. And, if you're watching this as recording, feel free to participate, take a notepad out and just write the answers on your notepad. Write any questions that you have on your notepad. And hopefully these questions get answered within the next 90 minutes that we're together. So how many of you are feeling just a little bit exhausted or overwhelmed um, with the Saturn station that's already going on? I have noticed, and I just spoke to my husband about this, that, oh my God, I am so tired. So much going on. And I've been feeling the pressure of that as well. Like just feeling the pressure of the Pluto in the last degree of Capricorn, the Saturn station, which of course is connected to Pluto in that last degree of Capricorn. So yeah, I've definitely been feeling that pressure. And then just check to see how many of you are curious to hear how the current and upcoming station phases are impacting you personally, right? So I hope all of you are curious to hear about that because that's what we're going to be talking about. And then just check and see if you have your birth chart in front of you. Just check and see, do you have any personal planets or points in 11 to 15 degrees of Pisces, Virgo, Gemini, or Sagittarius? So these are all the mutable signs, right? All the signs that are sort of like more able at being adaptable. Also, I call them the ADD signs because if you have a lot of those signs, you probably have ADD or ADHD. So 11 to 15 degrees of Pisces, Virgo, Gemini, or Sagittarius. And then also if you have planets or points in 20 to 29 degrees in those signs as well, in those mutable signs. And then also 4 to 8 degrees of the fixed signs. So Leo, Aquarius, Taurus, or Scorpio. So if you have any of those in your birth chart, then definitely you're going to be impacted to a much greater degree by these stationing phases that we're going to be talking about today. All right. So first of all, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for your time. I appreciate all of you. Thanks for your time, even if you're watching this as a recording. Thanks for taking the time to watch it. And of course, today, the station phases that we will be covering is Saturn, which is stationing direct on November 15th, today, as we're recording this, in Pisces. Then Mercury, which will station retrograde on November 25th, in 10 days from now, in Sagittarius. And then Mars, which will station retrograde on December 6th, in Leo. But of course, Mars's station phase is a little bit longer than Mercury because it's a slower moving planet than Mercury. And then Neptune, which of course is even slower moving outer planet, stations direct on December 7th, also in Pisces. So you can see here, because the station phases are in Pisces, Sagittarius, and Pisces, the mutable signs are definitely quite impacted by these station phases. And then we've got Mars in Leo, which is the fixed signs. All right. Now, if I already have your question, then I will answer that at the end of the webinar. It's already prepared. And if you have any questions that come up during the webinar, write them in the chat window, and I will see if I can either answer them right away or get to them towards the end, depending on how much time we have left. All right, so let's move to the next slide. Oh yeah, this is just want to say the next forum will be December 13th at 5 p.m. New York time, 2 p.m. Pacific time, 10 p.m. London time, in case you want to join us for the next round. And then all of you should have the overview for November and December. And the reason why I sent that out is just so you can see a little bit better in which order things are happening and for how long. So it gives you a nice overview, basically. And then, of course, the weekly forecasts will tell you in more detail, what's what and what it all means. But as you can see here, all of this are things that we're going to be talking about today. All of these red arrows, right? So there's a lot that we're covering. These are all the dates that we're covering. The thing that we're not going to cover is this purple arrow, which is Pluto in Aquarius, which will move into Aquarius on November 19th. And the reason why we're not covering that today is because I already have a webinar that covers Pluto in Aquarius, which I recorded, I think either at the beginning of this year or last year. So feel free to check out, I think there's actually 2 webinars already about Pluto and Aquarius. So if you're curious about what that means for you personally and how that impacts you personally, then definitely check out those webinars on my webinar page. All right, so this is all the stuff that's happening. Saturn, Mercury, Mars, Neptune. Mercury comes to a halt, Neptune intensifies, and so on, right? So with station phases, what happens is you'll have a planet slows down, and as it comes closer to coming to a halt, the slowdown intensifies. So what we usually talk about in the weekly forecasts, you will find that I'll talk about a planet slowing down, and then it gets more intense. So what that means is that energetically speaking, we feel that intensity, right? So right now with Saturn, of course, having gone, is stationing between November 6th and the 23rd, it gets much more intensified between the 10th and the 20th, which is where we're smack in the middle right now, because it comes to a halt on the 15th, right? So from either side of the halt, the planet tends to be very intensified in terms of its expression and its exaltation, right? So another thing I want to mention too with Pluto and Aquarius is we do have an article that's available to all of you if you're a member of my online community, that you can also read about how to connect to that energy more fully. And then for December, you can see here that, of course, the Mars station intensifies in December, even though it already starts its station on November 23rd, right? It gets even stronger at the beginning of December. And then we have the Mars retrograde when it comes to a halt. And then we have Neptune going direct also in the beginning of December, literally a day after Mars goes retrograde, Neptune goes direct. So we have 2 planets switching directions that same weekend, because December 6th and 7th is the weekend. So so we'll definitely feel something very exalted at that time, and I'll go into the details in a moment. And then all of this is going on. So these purple arrows here, the reason why they're purple is because we're not going to be talking about these things in greater detail today. However, feel free to use the weekly forecasts for more information on all of this stuff. And also, Chiron will station and be exalted in December, and that we will talk about in our next forecasting forum. So that's something that we will address in our next forum. And of course, that's the wounded healer. And that has to do with our triggers. It has to do with our wounding. It has to do with our healing process. So that's something to look forward to for next month. And then let's start by talking about Saturn, right? Because Saturn is the first planet to change directions out of all those planets that we're going to be talking about. And actually, before I dive deeply into Saturn, let me just say that when a planet slows down, it basically, from the point of view of the Earth, when we look up into the sky, it appears as though that planet out there is slowing down and changing directions, because the speed of the Earth and the speed of the other planet around the sun, because of the difference of speed, it appears as though other planets stop and go and, go backwards, go forwards. That's not actually what's happening. If you're out in the universe, that's not actually what's happening. However, from our point of view, that's what's happening from the point of view of the Earth. So we're feeling, because we're experiencing it in that way, we're feeling that energetic shift, whether that's actually happening out there or not. So basically, When a planet changes direction, slows down, and then speeds up again, that's what's called a station phase, right? So the slowing down, the stopping, and then the speeding up again. That's as long as the planet is not moving at its regular speed, that's the station phase. So until the planet reaches its normal speed, right? Whatever is normal as far as the ephemeris is concerned, in terms of the counting of the degrees. Until that planet reaches its normal speed, it moves slower and will therefore be more exalted and louder. That energy will be louder. So it is really important that we pay attention to what the archetypical energy of a planet is during the station phase and what that planet is trying to communicate to us during that time. And station phases do help us become more aware of how we're connecting to a particular energy, how we're connecting to Saturn, how we're connecting to Mercury, how we're connecting to Mars, right? Like, are we using the energy in the best way possible, or are we pulled into more denser vibrations of that energy more easily, right? So that's kind of what we can ask ourselves during a station phase. Like, am I using this energy in its highest potential, or am I being pulled into the more denser, darker places in connection with the archetypical energy? So let's talk about Saturn, right? So as you can see with this chart here, the Saturn retrograde started June 29th and it ends today, November 15th. It started at 19.5 degrees of Pisces and it ends at 12.5 degrees of Pisces, almost 13 degrees. And you can see that here with it's 12 degrees and 42 minutes. So that's sort of like in between 12.5 and 13, right? Because it counts up to 60 here with the minutes. Now, Saturn is exalted from November 6th until the 23rd. And that means during that time, we're feeling the energy more strongly. And like I said already, between the 10th and the 20th, that energy is even more intensified because we're like today, it's at a halt, right? So I'm definitely feeling this sense of like something feels very strong right now, like that Saturn that sometimes has that sense of pressure. So we want to pay attention to what comes up during a station phase, right? And to really allow that to be the observer. You're like, station phase is a great time to step into the observer position, right? So in the case of Saturn, we feel the need to fully face what is currently so. What is our reality right now? What's happening right now? What is so? And Saturn has to do with what needs to be done so that we can fully understand the practical implications of our reality and also the consequences of something, especially in connection with past actions. So Saturn is our karmic planet, right? So it has to do with the actions that I take. They have consequences down the line, And so in the now, when I take actions or when I make choices or choose something, then down the line, that will show up as like, was that a good choice? Or was that a good action? Or was it something that didn't serve me, that didn't work, right? So when I say consequence, I don't just necessarily mean that it's bad, right? Because consequences can be good as well. If you make a good choice and you take good actions, then the consequence of that can be, a success. It can be something positive. So it depends on, we don't want to necessarily think of consequences as something bad, right? Now, Saturn also represents our structures, responsibilities, and commitments, and our ability to do life on life's terms. So to be really realistic about what is life asking of me right now. And of course, with Saturn being in Pisces right now, it's a little bit topsy-turvy because Saturn is such an earthy energy and such a grounded, realistic, planet, Whereas Pisces is so ethereal and so dreamy and creative and so spiritual, right? So how do we combine a Saturn in Pisces? What does that look like, right? So basically, with Saturn in Pisces, we are being asked to be authentic about our intuitive connection to life. What does that look like? What's the reality, Saturn, of that intuitive connection, Pisces, right? So we're also asked to take a serious look, Saturn, at what works and what doesn't work, Saturn, right? Regarding our idealism, Pisces, our addictions or escapisms, Pisces, and our avoidance of life. In what way are you trying to avoid the harsh reality of something? That's Pisces as well. And also in regards to our dreams, what works and what doesn't work in connection to what we dream about or what we want to feel connected to from our heart, right? That's Pisces as well. So as you can see, I'm taking the keywords of Saturn and I'm mixing them up with the keywords of Pisces and I'm combining them, right? So what tools or structures support you with being in the flow, with being present, with feeling connected to the universe in this now moment? Because remember, tools or structures is Saturn, right? What tools or structures are supporting you with all of that Pisces stuff? Being in the flow, being present, feeling connected to the universe, right? What needs your attention in regards to that right now? Because Saturn is stationing. And what would you practice every day if you knew that that would bring you closer to your goal of having a more deeply intuitive connection to yourself and to life? What would you practice every day, right? Saturn, it's about practice. It's about learning what works and what doesn't work. And then what do you genuinely want to commit yourself to, right? What are some commitments you want to make in connection to Pisces, the intuition, the flow, the ability to understand your own energy body, to understand to understand your own heart. And also wherever you have that in your chart, right? Wherever Saturn is stationing in your own birth chart, that area of life needs to be looked at as well in terms of all of these questions, right? So if you have Saturn in the seventh house, for example, then it's in connection with relationships, right? Then needing to practice how to be in the flow, how to, be more present with other people, how to make that commitment, how to practice that, how to give that your attention and your focus, right? That can be very important during the station phase, to pay attention to that. Where am I at with being able to be present with another person? Where am I at with being able to commit myself to being in the flow in my relationships with other people? And then also, of course, Saturn represents the archetype of time, and how long something takes in terms of our maturity process, growing up, understanding our limitations, setting healthy boundaries with other people, living with integrity, being authentic and truthful, being serious and focused on building something of value, whether that's for society or whether that's for, if you have it in the seventh house, it's your relationships, building something of value to yourself, if it's in your first house, right? So depending on what area of life you have it in, how can you get more serious and more focused on building something that's of value? And then, of course, if we look at this chart here, right, you can also see that Saturn here is part of a T-square right now with Mercury and Jupiter. So that has been something that's been going on for a couple of weeks already, because before Mercury moved into this position, Venus was there. So there's been a T-square with Saturn for quite a while now. And we talked about that in the new moon video. We talked about that in the full moon video, right? This T-square. And basically Saturn feels very stressed right now. right? So not only is it stationing, it also feels extremely stressed, which means we need to be extremely kind to ourselves. We need to take the pressure off just a tiny bit, take that weight off just a tiny bit, make sure we get enough sleep, enough rest, right? That we make sure we get enough breaks, that we calm our nervous system, right? Very important, because that opposition between Jupiter and Mercury, that is like the speed of that, the mind is so hyperactive with that. So Saturn is just saying to us, oh my God, how can we slow down? How can we calm down? Like, this is too much, right? So that's also where, you might feel that pressure. You might get headaches, right? Because of all that, too much going on, right? So slow down as best as you can. And then I also want to show you guys this chart, this here, which I think is a really fantastic um, page that shows you all the keywords for Saturn. And what I did here is I put all the higher vibrational keywords or neutral keywords on the top. And then on the bottom here is the list of more denser, more darker expressions of Saturn. Okay. So basically, pay attention to what shows up, right, with the Saturn station. Because remember, Saturn is our teacher. So when Saturn stations and comes to a halt, it does teach us something. It is the cosmic teacher, which means that there's something that you're learning right now about yourself, about your relationships, about your home, your family, depending on where it is in your chart, right? About your career, about where you want to make commitments. So you're learning something right now, and so pay attention to what that is, where you're being asked to look, for example, at your spiritual goals and ambitions, and to become more mature around that, how you want to connect to that Pisces energy, right? And then, what calls for commitments to build a more solid foundation with your intuition, right? Because remember, it's Pisces is about our intuition, our interconnectivity with all of life, you could say, right? So, of course, since Saturn has been retrograde since the end of June, so the last 4.5 months, we've had a chance to really reassess, our limits and boundaries, and sort of like reclaim our own spiritual authority and become more realistic and responsible around our dreams, and also any spiritual or creative endeavors, or how we connect to intuition, or the energy body, or this interconnectivity that we have with our all of life, with other people, with the planet, with the universe, with other planets, right? So we also got a chance to get much clearer on our interconnectivity with everything, right? And that's now that Saturn is coming to a halt and moving forward again. This is our time to move forward and make progress with any of those things that we've learned during the retrograde phase, right? And of course, our progress will be in direct proportion to the amount of inner work that we've been doing since Saturn went retrograde, since June 29th, right? So you can just check in with yourself. What have you done the last 4.5 months in connection with that Saturn in Pisces retrograde? In connection with setting better boundaries for yourself when it comes to your energy body, when it comes to needing to rest, when it comes to needing to have plenty of sleep, for example. Or how about being more realistic about your own and other people's limitations, or about your own and other people's sensitivities, right? This is all connected to Saturn in Pisces. Now, let's talk a little bit, unless somebody has a question. I hope all of this was clear. Okay. So we have a question here, actually. Brittany is saying, I'd like to ask in advance how this will affect me personally. Okay. Yes, Brittany, I have your chart already prepared for the end of the webinar because I already have a question for you in regards to the full moon. Yes, I already did that. So we'll get to that at the end. So let's talk a little bit about Mercury, right? Because let's look at Mercury. So I chose the November 25th chart, which is when Mercury is going to go retrograde. And Mercury will be retrograde from the 25th until December 15th. It starts out with its retrograde phase at 22.5 degrees of Sagittarius and will then move to 6.5 degrees of Sagittarius as it moves backwards by December 15th. And we will feel Mercury being exalted from November 20th until the 29th. So that's coming up in about 5 days from now. And when that happens, Mercury station is asking us to pay attention to anything that's in our face. Remember, the planet gets louder, right? So something's in our face in connection with Mercury stuff, right? Like short-term travel, long-term travel, because it's in Sagittarius, right? So Sagittarius has to do with longer journeys. In connection with any kind of adventure, something new that we want to be engaging in or immersing ourselves in. Sagittarius, right? The adventures. Then Sagittarius is also connected with the law sometimes, right? Like how do we abide by the law, but the laws of nature, but the laws of physics, but the laws of all kinds of things, the planet, um, and also the idea of law, right? Like how do we abide by the idea of what is law? What does law mean? How does it get created? How do we, these are social agreements that we've made with other people, what is law and what isn't law, right? So that's why that can come into the forefront around that time. And then, of course, Mercury is about transportation, communication, and then also all of these technologies that are connected to communication and transportation, right? Anything connected to that, like cars, planes, bicycles, boats, communication devices like our computer, our phone, our iPads, our whatever we use to communicate with other people, Morse code, anything like that. So you will get a chance to sort of like, as you're paying attention to what comes up during that station phase when it's exalted, you will get a chance to sort of like reorganize yourself once Mercury goes retrograde after November 25th. And so between the time where it's exalted, you just need to be a little bit patient, right? The station phase, and this is true for all station phases, we need to be patient because station phases mean that the planet just isn't moving that fast. That means things are slowing down. So we need to be patient with ourselves. We need to be patient with others. We might have misunderstandings during the station phase that, especially if the planet is squaring something in your chart, if it's conjuncting something in your chart or squaring something or opposing something in your birth chart, then you will definitely feel that more strongly. But definitely going with the flow is recommended during the station phase, especially the closer we get to when the planet comes to a halt on November 25th. And it's also, I wouldn't recommend starting anything brand new in terms of new information. Whether that's the station phase or the retrograde phase, you want to just kind of like, don't explore or learn something brand new during that time. If you can, pay attention to what's coming up that needs to be dealt with or changed, something that you've already learned, something that you've already explored or dealt with the previous 3 weeks or even the previous 3 months, since the last retrograde phase. And since Mercury is in Sagittarius, pay attention to what comes up around your life perspectives, your life attitudes, your own belief systems, your philosophies, but also your opinions about things. Sagittarius can be very opinionated in the way that it's like, oh, I know the answer to this. They tend to, sometimes Sagittarius can be a little bit like, I know it all, right? And not that that's bad necessarily, because Sagittarius does know a lot because they're very interested in a lot of things. And so they are very smart often, and they have a lot of knowledge and wisdom. However, sometimes it can be also something where they can get stuck in the past with whatever they're believing or whatever opinions they're having, and they're not updating themselves necessarily all the time. So That's something to pay attention to during the station phase. What's coming up in connection to things that need maybe an update in your life in terms of your thinking structures, in terms of your beliefs, in terms of your opinions, in terms of your perspectives and attitudes, right? And then, of course, what's going to be really helpful with this, we have Mercury and Jupiter in a mutual reception, which means that they're in each other's sign. And so they support each other's agenda. We talked about that in the full moon video, so feel free to watch that for more. But that's definitely very supportive, and that will help us with engaging a little bit more with trying to up level our thinking a little bit, and up level our beliefs, and up level our perspectives, right? Now, Mercury is also making a trine to Chiron at the time of the station. So that can be really beneficial for our own healing journey, healing purpose, because we're getting to feel more supported in connection with our healing. We can find a new perspective in terms of how we look at our own triggers. We can find a new perspective in terms of like what actions we take so that we can facilitate a greater healing for ourselves and for other people. So that can be very helpful there, right? Okay, now let's talk about, before we talk about Mars, actually, I have another beautiful chart here with Mercury. Feel free to take a screenshot of this if you want to. I might also attach these pages to the recording so that you have that as a handout, because I think these are just really helpful to have these keywords, right? So these are the keywords for Mercury. On top is all the either higher vibrational stuff or neutral stuff. And then at the bottom here is the stuff that's a little bit more denser vibrational and a little bit darker, and something that maybe doesn't serve us as much. So we would just want to, again, be the observer, pay attention to what's showing up during that Mercury station phase, because it will really help you to then dive deeper into some of these issues during the Mercury retrograde phase. All right. Now, let me see. Where am I? Mars. Let's talk about Mars. So Mars, sorry about that. I ate before I started the forum, and I just realized that something stuck in my tooth. So Mars is going to station to go retrograde on December 6th, right? So the retrograde phase starts then and goes all the way until February 23rd. Now, this is quite a long retrograde phase, right? Because Mars is a much slower moving planet. So we will experience that retrograde phase for much longer than like Mercury or Saturn is even longer because that's even slower than Mars, but Mars is certainly slower than Mercury. So here we are for, let's see, this is 2.5 months, I would say, right? It's like a 2.5 months retrograde phase. Starts at 6 degrees of Leo, goes all the way to 17 degrees of Cancer. Okay. So, basically what we want to pay attention to with Mars is very much in connection with the masculine energies within ourselves, right? And everyone has them. Women and men alike have masculine energies. It just refers to the part of you that is active. It's the part of you that goes after things. It's the part of you that that is adventurous and courageous, right? So these are all the Mars archetypical energies, and I also will have another one of these for you in a second. Let me just talk a little bit about Mars here first before we go there. And also, of course, it's exalted from November 23rd until December 19th, as you can see here. And so as Mars is really strong during that time, it might bring up some frustration because Mars likes to move fast. And of course, we're slowing down with the station phase. So Mars is not going to be happy about that. So we might bring up frustration, and maybe even we might get angry or triggered by, that slowdown. And because Mars is in Leo as it's slowing down at that time, we may feel that there's more pride coming up. We might feel a little bit stuck in pride, or being proud about something, or easily offended because we're being proud about something. Leo can be also a little bit about like I'm important, you got to pay attention to me, so there's a little bit of that can come into our awareness. We might feel a little bit childish sometimes, Leo, because Leo is connected to the inner child. When it becomes louder, when the inner child becomes louder, it can be a little bit extreme. So it can feel a little bit like overkill, right? Like when someone's being a little bit too childish, right? But it can also express itself as impulsive or impatient or overly dramatic, right? Because let's face, Leo is the sign that is connected to acting. It's connected to being self-expressed. It's connected to, drama and, being dramatic in our own way. So definitely, if you have Leo planets, you can probably relate to this, that sometimes you can get a little bit over dramatic about things where you just go, oh my God, I can't believe this. Oh, and it goes into a much bigger octave than it needs to go with Leo, right? But that's just part of the passion that Leo also has, right? And can go into this sort of like heartfelt, passionate place as well. But, because Mars will be exalted, it can also move towards a place of like being more aware of our own courage, for example, because Leo can be very courageous. So courage, Mars is courageous, Leo is courageous. So there's a lot of courage. So we feel that very strongly as well. Or we might feel that we really can come from a more heart-centered place as well. Like our heart is just so like there's like a yes. There's like an ability to say yes and to take risks as well with a Mars station and be more open and optimistic, right? So that can be part of it too. So it doesn't necessarily have to go into the denser vibrations of Mars in Leo. It can also go into the higher vibrations and the lighter vibrations. But, because we're dealing with Mars, and, Mars can sometimes, when Mars gets to be extreme or loud or exalted, it can be connected to anger, and it can be connected to wanting to move faster. So we might feel this unexpected outburst of like, oh my God, I need to, speed up, right? Um, and, so if you can during the Mars station, do your best to slow down and just be aware and conscious of that, get present, focus on what you're grateful for already in your life, and allow for whatever needs to unfold. Because the truth is that you will definitely make progress. You will definitely move forward eventually. It's just a matter of time. And timing is everything when it comes to a station planet and when it comes to a retrograde phase, right? It's all about timing. So what you want to really address during the retrograde phase, which we talked about in our last webinar, last forum, when we talked about Mars, you really want to address the things that are coming up during the shadow phase, right? And so feel free to watch the previous webinar for all of that. But yeah, so you kind of want to ask yourself, if I were really honest with myself, is the timing right now for whatever it is that you want to do or move forward with? Like, just ask yourself, is the timing right now? And really keep tuning into that. Even if you don't know the answer to that question, allow yourself to keep tuning into that until an answer comes. And then you can also ask, what needs to happen first before I can move forward with my heart's desire? And again, that heart's desire depends on where Mars is in your natal chart, right? Wherever that's taking place in your natal chart. So, if it's in your 12th house, for example, then it's connected to needing to have some peace, some alone time, needing to have some downtime, right? Needing to slow things down a little bit. And you can use the handout that I sent with the email that has the houses in it. Use that handout to see which area of life is going to be more impacted by that Mars station, and where you can ask those questions, right? All right. So before we go to Neptune, let me just show you this beautiful chart here with Mars. Now, what I did with Mars was a little bit different, and I'm not quite sure why I did it differently from the other ones, but I basically did all the keywords that are framed in orange. These keywords are the higher vibrational energies of Mars, and all the keywords that are not framed, that are by themselves, those are the more denser vibrational energies of Mars and the darker vibrations of Mars. Okay. So you can see here, take a look, what comes up for you. Again, be the observer. Let yourself feel what you're feeling. Be the observer, because during the station phase, that is, right, which with Mars, we're not here yet, that's coming up. But be the observer and allow yourself to really see, where do I need to make adjustments with that inner Mars energy, right? That inner connection that I have to Mars. Where do I need to take more actions? Do I need to take less actions? Do I need to, pay attention to when I'm being rash or when I'm getting angry? What about impatience? Can I take a look at my impatience and where that shows up and how and why? Can I maybe go after certain things a little bit more than I have been previously, right? What about my sexual desires, right? Like Mars and Leo, of course, that is both fire, right? Mars is fire, Leo is fire. So our sexual energies are especially strong during Mars and Leo, right? So how are we connecting to that? Are we connecting to our sexual desires in a healthy way, or are we connecting them in an impulsive way or in an addictive kind of a way, right? So we can take a look at these things, right? Now let's talk a little bit about Neptune. And then actually, let me check and see if there were any other questions, but it doesn't look that way. Okay. So let's take a look at Neptune. So what we have here is Neptune is going to station direct, right, on December 7th. And the retrograde phase started July 2nd and ends on December 7th. So we're still retrograde until December 7th with Neptune. And it started at 29.5 degrees of Pisces, actually almost 0 degrees of Aries. That's where the station began, or where the retrograde began, at a very, very, very last degree of Pisces, which is a super exalted degree. So in the summer, in July, we felt this highly exalted Neptune energy. And I don't know if you felt that, but this summer I felt this sense of like, it just felt so, I felt so interconnected, so in tune with my surroundings. I felt so in tune with my feelings, and I really felt this connection to everything around me. And it felt very spiritual. It felt very, very heart-centered. And I was quite aware of that during the summertime. And I had a much easier time, slowing down and being relaxed, and which of course right now is not as available to me with the Saturn station right now. But I definitely felt that in the summer. Well, now that Neptune is going to be exalted again from November 24th until December 18th, we might start to feel a little bit of that again. And that also will benefit the Mars station, right? And the Mercury station, because Mercury, Mars, and Neptune will start their stations right around the same time, right? Mercury goes first on the 20th, but then follows Mars on the 23rd, and then Neptune on the 24th, right? So it's like dominoes, right? Next week, there's going to be like dominoes falling and becoming more exalted. That's why we're talking about all of them today in the forum, right? Because it's all happening at the same time. And so with all of that happening at the same time, and Neptune, of course, bringing in a little bit of a softness to all of that. So even if we feel Mercury quite strong in terms of like the talking and the blah, 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 like this is the mind might be speeding up a little bit and getting a little bit overwhelmed. Mars speeding up and we're feeling this action and active energy inside of us, kind of like culminating and going like, woo. But Neptune will kind of like calm us down a little bit, hopefully. So this is good news, right? It's good news that these stations happen together, so one will support the other to a certain degree, right? Or we'll get to play with that a little bit within ourselves. Now, whenever a planet stations, that archetypal energy definitely intensifies. And so the end of November until the middle of December, that's a good time to tune into our intuition and our creativity, to spend time in nature, meditation, art, whatever puts you in a quiet, relaxed, receptive state, right? So that's all connected to Neptune right here. So feel free to take a screenshot of that if that resonates, or if you want to remember that for when the station begins. Or you can also watch, the recording at that time again. But yeah, so Neptune, because it's an outer planet, right? Because it moves so much slower. I mean, Neptune is the furthest out planet, so it moves the slowest, right? It moves very, very slowly. So Neptune's station period, I mean, I guess you could say Neptune and Pluto, right? Those two, Neptune and Pluto, they move extremely slowly, right? And so Neptune's station period has even more weight because of that. And it moves more slowly for a much longer period of time, right? I mean, you can see here, it starts at the end of November, and it goes until like almost the end of December, right? So it's the middle to end. So that's a long period for a planet to be louder, right? And the Neptune station is also especially strong because it's in its own sign, right? Neptune rules Pisces, which means the Neptune is in its own sign, and that makes it even stronger. And so if you want to take a look at the lighter and denser vibrations of Neptune, right, that will help you. So if we look at this chart here, right, so these on top, these are the lighter and neutral vibrations of Neptune, and these are more denser vibrations of Neptune below. And if you take a look at all of that and just start to become aware of how these energies are coming up in your life during the station phase, right? How is that showing up? And just having that awareness really helps to connect you more fully to these energies inside of yourself, right? And then we can really see, where do we need to either embrace an energy more fully or connect to them in a much healthier way that doesn't involve in us sort of getting lost in those murky lower vibrations of their expression, right? Which is all that stuff down here. Okay. So I hope all of this makes sense. So again, feel free to take a screenshot of this, but I will probably also attach that to the recording so you have that. I briefly want to say I have another Solidity Today podcast show coming up on December 6th at 8 a.m. You can watch it on YouTube, or you can also watch it via radio or podcast places. If you go to my YouTube channel, you can watch it here via my playlists. If you click on my latest Solidity Today show here, it will be on top. The latest will always be on top, and you can watch the other ones as well that we've done previously. But one thing that I want to mention here with this show is we will be talking about all of the zodiac signs and how to give the perfect gift for all of the different signs. So if you're looking for great gifts for people in your lives and you know what their sign is, especially if you know what their sun sign is, their Venus, their moon, and their rising sign, the more you know, the better, obviously. If you know all those for people, then you can buy the perfect gift for them. So we'll talk about that in that show. So definitely join us for that. And then now let's pull up our own birth charts. Take a moment, take your own birth chart out, and we're gonna look to see how all of this connects and relates to your birth chart. Okay. Now, Brittany, you asked a question here about how will it affect Scorpio. I was just wondering, what are you referring to? You're referring to one of the station phases, or you're referring to the full moon, or just let me know what you're referring to when you say how does it affect Scorpio. All right, so let's take out our birth charts. This is the Time Passages birth chart. This is the astro.com birth chart. Same birth charts, just different look. I have Time Passages as my computer program, so that's what I use. So one of the things we want to do always when we look at our own birth charts is for each of the station phases, you want to know where is your natal planet of that station phase. Where is natal Saturn? Where's your natal Mercury? Where's your natal Mars? And where's your natal Neptune? Because whatever the station phase is doing in your birth chart, it is also going to be impacting your natal placement, your natal position of that planet. So my natal Saturn, right, is in the 8th house, as you can see here. And it rules my 3rd house, right? Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn. So wherever Capricorn is in your natal chart, that is also a placement that will be impacted by the Saturn station. The 8th house in my chart and the 3rd house in my chart are impacted by Saturn. So we want to write that down in a notebook, right? Like take your notebook out, write down where's your natal Saturn, where's Capricorn in your natal chart, write that in a notebook in terms of the house placement. Then let's look at natal Mercury. Where is natal Mercury in your chart and what houses does it rule? So my natal Mercury is here conjunct the sun in the 7th house, okay? So the 7th house would be impacted by the Mercury station in my case, but also the 11th house, because Mercury rules Virgo and Gemini, right? So Gemini is the ruler of my 9th house. Virgo is the ruler of my, or Virgo is on the cusp of my 11th house. So Mercury is the ruler of my 9th house and my 11th house. So I would have to write down for Mercury station, 7th house, 9th house, 11th house. Okay. And then for Mars, for the Mars placement, we look to see where is Mars in the natal chart? What house does it occupy? So in my case, Mars occupies the 4th house. And what areas of life does it rule in my birth chart? Mars rules Aries. So wherever you have Aries in your birth chart, I have 2 houses that are ruled by Aries. One is the 6th house, and then one is the 7th house, because Aries is on the cusp of my 7th and on the cusp of my 6th. So Mars station will impact my 4th house, my 6th house, and my 7th house. So now we already have 2 station phases that impact the same house. The Mercury station phase impacts my 7th, and the Mars station phase impacts my 7th, right? So now we write that down. Now we look at where is Neptune in the natal chart. In my natal chart, Neptune is in the 2nd house. So it impacts, the Neptune station impacts my 2nd house, but it also impacts the house that is ruled, that has Pisces on the cusp, because Neptune rules Pisces, which would be my 5th house. So the 2nd and the 5th house are both being impacted by the Neptune station phase. So we write that down, whatever that is in your chart. And now, so these are the houses, right? Now we can take a look at these descriptions of the houses and look to see, for example, my 7th house is impacted more than once. And that's the area of one-on-one relationships, personal and business. So that will be impacted by the Mercury station and by the Mars station in my case, right? So that's definitely a house that I need to pay attention to. But also, the other thing we want to pay attention to, of course, is where are the transiting planet traveling in my chart, right? So we take a look at starting with Saturn, which stationed direct today. that is taking place in my fifth house because Saturn is in Pisces at 12 and a half degrees of Pisces. And my fifth house starts with 10 degrees, 10 and a half degrees of Pisces. And so Saturn, of course, is already in the fifth house then. And also Neptune is also in my fifth house. So Saturn and Neptune are both stationing in the fifth house, which may not be true for all of you that it's happening in the same house. However, it's possible because they're both in the same sign. So if you have a house in your birth chart that has 12 and a half degrees and 27 degrees in the same house, within the same house frame, then you will have both of those stations happening in the same house. So in my case, it's the fifth house, which means that it's connected to my self-expression. It's connected to playfulness. It's connected to taking risks. It's connected to my inner child. So there's something that I need to pay attention in that area of my life, being self-expressed, being more courageous, possibly, what's showing up in connection to those things, with Pisces being there. Of course, Pisces has to do with our intuition, our intuitive connection to life. So how can I be more intuitively connected to my courage, to how I express myself? How can I express myself more in a way where I can honor my intuition, like really allow intuition to flow through me as I'm expressing myself. And then we have, of course, Mars and Mercury as well, right? With Mars, that's happening in my ninth house. That station is happening in my ninth house. However, it's very close to my career point, right? You can see here, Mars is like almost reaching that career point, not quite, and then going retrograde. But as it is stationing, it's probably because it's so close, it's like within 1 degree, it will impact my career point as well. So something's happening there with that exalted Mars in connection with my career, in connection with who I am out there in the world, how people see me, something in connection with courage, leadership. There's something that I'm becoming much more aware of in terms of like, how do I need to step up? What is required of me for me to step up into more of a leadership place out there in the world with my career. And of course, because Mars goes retrograde, I'm going to have time to think about that and prepare myself to what that looks like during the retrograde phase. And when Mars comes back to that degree, that's when I'm going to be ready to step into that place of leadership and entrepreneurship or whatever, right? So again, we talked about the shadow phase and retrograde phases in our last forecasting forum already. So feel free to rewatch that if you want more information about that. And then of course, Mercury here with the station happens in my second house. And so the second house is connected to self-worth. It's connected to my talents, my values. It's connected to money and finances. So something in connection to that, any attitudes that I have or beliefs that I have in connection to money or finances or my own self-value is needs to be looked at, during that station phase to see what comes up. What do I believe about myself and what I have to offer? And then also during the retrograde phase, I might have to, tune into myself in connection with that and see if I can make some adjustments, so I can feel a little bit more connected to myself in a meaningful way, have a narrative and stories about who I am that serve me, that honor me, that value me, right? So that's what's going to happen here with this. Now, again, remember, we also said that it will impact the natal placements, right? So with Mars, it will impact not only my career up here, but it will also impact what's going on for me at home. And of course, Mars also rules my relationship house and my house of daily routines and day-to-day work. So my work relationships, you could say, are also connected to Mars. So there's something in connection to my work relationships, my one-on-one relationships, business and personal, and to my home life that needs to be assessed, or something needs to be looked at there in terms of my ability to be courageous or to take action or to move forward with something, right? And of course, here's the thing. You have to remember, astrology is not about predictions. It's about aligning your energy with what's going on. So that means that I don't know what's going to happen during the station phase. I don't know what's going to happen during the retrograde phase. I have no clue. But what I do know is that it's connected to my career, it's connected to my home life, it's connected to my work relationships and to my one-on-one relationships. And so I will pay attention to what comes up in those areas of my life. And as I have the awareness to pay attention to that, whatever shows up, I will be able to handle it much better, because I will be able to go, oh, okay, so that's part of that Mars station phase that what I'm trying to learn right now. This is showing me something. This is giving me the awareness to make adjustments down the line when Mercury is retrograde, when Mars is retrograde, right? So we were getting a chance to create much more of a conscious connection to how we want to show up for ourselves and in our lives. And this is where astrology comes in, right? It's not about predicting or protecting us or saving us from something terrible to happen. What it is doing is it's giving us the awareness and the ability to deal with things that do show up in a much more conscious way, and become the observer and be more grounded within ourselves as these things show up. So that's what's really helpful with astrology, right? So it's not about trying to fix anything or protect ourselves. It's about meeting life the best way we can, to have the best foundation and mindset and attitude in place so that we can meet life more resourcefully. Does that make sense? I hope this makes sense, what I'm sharing here, right? Okay. All right. So now let's take a look at, oh yeah, we're coming almost to our questions. I just wanted to mention real quick that we have a Black Friday sale coming up for 1 week, November 22nd until the 28th. It's a Black Friday pre-sale because it's happening before Black Friday. And all of the readings will be 44% off. And you can use the discount code BLF pre-sale at checkout when you pick yourself a reading. And I would say, use this sale to get some Christmas gifts going for other people. Buy your partner a gift, buy your friends gifts, whoever you think might be getting something out of having a reading done for them. Buy them a reading for Christmas or for yourself. Readings are good for 6 months. So even if you don't want to do a reading yourself right away, you can buy yourself a reading during the sale and then schedule your reading within the next 6 months. Okay. That's how long the readings are good for. And then, I wanted to show you also how much of a discount this is, just so you get an idea. So if you're already a member, right, and you're a star member, if you want to do a follow-up reading, you would normally get already a discount for your follow-up reading. It will be, instead of 187, it will be 100. Hold on, does that say 100? Yeah, 187 would be 150. And with the discount, it comes to $66. So I think you can't beat that, right? I mean, these are really great prices. So take advantage of that only for 1 week. And then I always do one-on-one tutoring sessions with people as well, if you want to take advantage of that. If you are a star member, you can take advantage of that. Or if you soul-based astrology course, if you're a student of mine, you can take advantage of that. And they come in 25-minute sessions or 1-hour sessions. All right. And then before we go into the Q&A, let me just mention very briefly that next forecasting forum will be on December 13th on a Friday at 5 p.m. New York time, 2 p.m. Pacific time, and 10 p.m. London time. And we'll talk about the Chiron station phase, its retrograde, its direct station direct phase. And then also, the Mercury post-shadow phase is going to start around that time as well, December 15th. So we'll talk a little bit about that too. And then, these are just, if you know anybody who would like to join these forecasting forums, just let them know that there is an early bird special that's available for a lot less until December 11th. And if you're a universal member, you get a 10% discount at any time, whether the early bird special is available or not. All right. If you want to ask questions in advance for my forecasting forums, you can submit a question right here in your membership portal. If you go to forecasting forum and then click on submit the question here. But you can also send me an email if you can't figure that out in the back end. And let's go to our questions. We have questions. We have lots of beautiful questions. So Brittany wanted to know about how the full moon impacts her over the next 2 weeks, because she has definitely, the full moon is connecting to her chart in a very powerful way. So let's take a look at her chart. So this is Brittany's chart, and I pulled up the bi-wheel chart for her so that we can see a little bit more clearly like what it looks like on the inside. That's her birth chart. And then on the outside, those are the transits. And the full moon right here, that moon-Uranus conjunction that is part of that full moon that we have today, that is making a square to her moon nodes. And of course, the sun being exactly opposite the moon and opposite Uranus, that is also making a square to her moon nodes. So actually, I think, Brittany, you're here. Are you still here with me? Let me just...
Yes, I'm here. I'm here.
You're here. Okay, fantastic. So, so basically, Brittany, I would say for you, because the moon, Uranus, and the sun are, all three of these planets are making a square to your natal moon nodes, which represent your soul's journey in this lifetime. You are at a turning point with this full moon. There's something that comes up with this full moon that shifts your perspective, and that shifts how you think about yourself, how you think about how you connect with other people. Because the North Node in Aquarius, of course, is connected to like-minded people or groups of people, or collaborations that you have with other people, or work situations that you have with other people, right? So there's something that shifts in your perspective in connection with all of that. And because it's your sixth house, it might also shift. You might also have a shift in perspective in connection with your health and work routine, right? Like something in connection with how you do your current work routine, how you do your current health routine. Something needs to change, right? And so this full moon makes it very clear to you. You becoming really aware, right? Because a full moon always gives us this awareness, this huge awareness of that something needs to change, that you cannot do certain things to your own body anymore. You have to honor, what's right for you, right? What serves you, what helps you in terms of your own well-being. Also, because this is taking place in the ninth house and in the third house, this is very much connected to shifting your perspective in the ninth house, right? There's a need of shift in perspective in connection to how you relate to other people, right? The full moon is also shows us how we relate to other people, and not just in terms of not just in terms of like how we relate to them on a day-to-day basis, but also how we relate to them in terms of our communication, in terms of our thinking, our stories, our narratives that we have about other people, about our relationships with other people. So we need to you need to think a little bit outside the box over the next 2 weeks and give yourself permission to shift your narratives, to shift your stories, to shift how you're thinking about something, right? And that will change how you show up in your relationships, basically, right? And if we look at the natal placement of the sun and the moon and Uranus, for example, right? Because these are the planets involved with this full moon. If we look at these planets in the natal chart, your sun here is in your 11th house. Again, that's connected to groups of people, tribes, right? Sort of like a tribal connection you want like a tribal connection with someone. And maybe you feel that within your family construct, there's sort of like a tribal connection with your family. Maybe you feel very much connected to them. Like whatever you're doing out there in the world is very much connected to your family. And also with the moon in the 4th house, that is also connected to family. So something in connection with family, there's something that you're learning with this full moon in connection with your family where you are going to need to give yourself a little bit more space. Because remember, Uranus is about spaciousness, it's about detachment, it's about giving ourselves space to be ourselves, to honor our own individuality, honor who we are. So this full moon is inviting you to take some space, right? To take some space, especially when it comes to your family or loved ones. When it comes to interacting with a group of people or a tribe of people, right? So, Brittany, I know you're going to be the next 2 weeks. Is that all? That includes Thanksgiving, doesn't it? Right?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So basically, the next 2 weeks, that includes Thanksgiving, which I would venture to say that this has to do with, at Thanksgiving, when you're with your family, when you're with, whoever is going to be there for Thanksgiving, you're going to have to take time for yourself and just disconnect a little bit, not be so uh, available all the time. You know, you tend to be when it comes to your family, right? Because you have the moon in the 4th house, there is a strong connection with family. There's a strong sense of feeling almost like obligated to be there for your family, right? And so maybe this is a way for you to try out something different, to try out something new, to shift how you're doing that, how you're relating and connecting with your family during that time, and to make sure that you honor what's right for you. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Okay, yeah. So that's that I would say. And then the other thing also that I saw is that Venus is on top of your natal Uranus at the time of the full moon, right now, actually, because today is the full moon. And of course, Venus rules Taurus, which is the ruler of the full moon. And because Venus is the ruler of the full moon, and it's smack on top of your Uranus, you definitely are being asked to just shift how you are relating to other people. How you do relationships needs to change. The way you've done relationships in the past, it's been, I would venture to say that it's been complicated and it's been depleting you at best, right? And with Venus on top of your Uranus, you're getting a chance to sort of like become a little bit more detached and go, okay, what can I do for me that works for me here? That, you don't have to like, throw the baby out with the bathwater and like completely get rid of these relationships, right? That's not what I'm talking about. But you want to make sure that you're honoring yourself within these relationships, that you're making sure that you can be okay. And look, Saturn's station is happening in your 7th house, relationships, right? That's another one that points towards making sure you have good boundaries with other people, making sure that you take care of yourself within your relationships. The Neptune station says, and this is not until a little bit later. Actually, I think around Thanksgiving, Neptune will already be stationing, right? But so for Thanksgiving, be compassionate with yourself and with other people. Take care of yourself, but also be compassionate. But don't become a martyr, right? We want to stay away from, when it comes to Pisces, we want to stay away from becoming a martyr or doing too much for other people, So, and because you have Pisces on both of these relationship houses, it's easy for you to deplete yourself, right? To get exhausted. Does that make sense, Brittany?
I'm here still.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I keep
Does that
muting
make
it.
sense?
Yes, it does make perfect sense. In regards to Pisces, is when you say martyr, uh is that in relation to sacrificing like myself
Yes.
to dreams? Okay.
Yeah, sacrificing yourself, sacrificing your dreams for other people, sacrificing, your own needs. Um,
Right. Putting
sacrifice.
other things above my own self and well-being.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And
Okay.
that sounds familiar, doesn't it?
It's spot on, Sonja.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so let's go to Valerie's question. So how does the focus of this month's forecasting forum have an impact on my healing journey? And also, might there be anything connected to grief? Okay, so as we're answering questions for people, I also just want to invite you to look to see how can you make use of other people's questions with your own chart, because sometimes we will, a person asks a question and there might be something in that question that you can relate to yourself as well in your own chart or in your own life. So really listen out for those things. Listen for the things that help you connect to your own chart as I'm answering these questions for other people. All right, so we have Valerie here. So Valerie, first of all, what I want to say is in terms of the healing process, the healing journey, you're definitely at a turning point with this full moon today because, Venus is making a square to your natal Chiron. So there is a sense that something's shifting in connection to your own healing journey. And, there's a very dire need for you to really take good care of yourself. Venus is in your sixth house. So it says, honor my health and well-being above all else, right? It's in Capricorn. So you need to step up and do this yourself. You need to make sure that you take care of you. And because Saturn is also stationing right now in your eighth house, and natally it's in your 11th house here, right? Saturn is the ruler of your sixth house, the ruler of your house of health and well-being. So that planet is teaching you something right now. It's saying something to you. So if you have any kind of strong symptoms right now, since Saturn has started its station phase, and I think it started November 6th, right? So since November 6th, if you've been having certain symptoms show up, certain things that you've become more aware of in terms of your health and well-being, then Saturn is saying to you, slow down, tune in, take breaks, get plenty of sleep, allow yourself to take a step back, like set good boundaries with other people. Remember, you've got Saturn in the eighth house. This is connected to other people. The eighth house is also connected to, because it's a Scorpio house, it can be connected to our grieving process as well. So with Saturn being in your eighth house, that can bring up more of this, like, how do I allow myself to grieve right now, right? So feelings of grief. I know you lost someone. Of course, that was a person that was really important to you, which was probably connected to the eighth house. When we have intimate relationships people that we care about very deeply, they tend to be in our eighth house, sometimes our seventh house, depending on what type of relationship it is. Um, but also could be connected to the fourth house because it was family, right? Because this was a family member. And of course, you do have the moon here in Scorpio in the fourth house. So the full moon, um, I think I made this chart for November 22nd and not for today. But of course, the full moon is happening in your 10th and fourth house, I think, right? Because it's in 20. What degree is the full moon in again? 20, 24 degrees. Yes. So it is still happening in your fourth and 10th house, the full moon. So definitely there is a need to, with the full moon, there's a need to focus on, how you can honor yourself, how you can be there for yourself, right? And how you can show to the world that you are honoring who you are in the process of everything that's going on, in the process of you grieving, in the process of you not feeling great or having certain health issues pop up, right? So there's all of that is going on at the same time. And then, of course, with Mars here, the Mars station, I would say has another really big impact on you when it starts, which will be next week on the 24th. Yes, on the 23rd. On the 23rd is when the Mars station begins. So that Mars station is on top of your South Node in Leo, and opposing your North Node in Aquarius. So this Mars station definitely says to you, listen, you gotta let go of some activity or doing too much, or you gotta just look at how you're using that masculine energy in a more balanced, healthy way. If you're not using Mars in a balanced, healthy way right now, then you are going to feel the impact of that. That will, Mars, of course, is also related to our healing journey right now because it answers to Aries, and Chiron is in Aries right now. So, we need to pay attention to how are we using our masculine energies right now, because if that's not balanced, if there is an imbalance, if we're doing too much, or if we're pushing too much, or if we're too impatient or too little or too much of that masculine energy, is not going to serve us. We will feel an impact when that happens, when we're not experiencing that balance. And the impact can be a physical impact, or it can be an emotional impact. It can be that we feel really insecure, or that we feel really overwhelmed. It could be that we feel physically drained or not well, so whatever the impact might be, that comes from not using Mars in a balanced way currently. Does that make sense, Valerie? I hope it makes sense. So make sure that you get some downtime. This is in your 12th house. Mars says to you right now by station, and it's going to retrograde in that house as well. It's going to stay in that 12th house for a long time, because it goes back to 17 degrees of Cancer, and then it moves forward again. So it will be here for a long time. And this means you need to let go of doing so much, slow down, like tune in, be there for yourself, take actions that support your mental, emotional, and physical well-being. And that's part of your healing journey, right? That is a big part of your healing journey. And then next month in December, we'll talk about Chiron, the Chiron station, which is also connected to our healing journey. And that will be on the top of your chart. So I'll go over that next month with you if you like. All right. Okie dokie. So let me see what time it is so we know if we have more time or if time's out. So I think we're already at the end of our 90 minutes, it looks like, right? Because yeah. So we have 2 more minutes. So feel free to join us next month for the Chiron Station webinar, our ancestral wounds, Chiron Exalted. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for being a part of the online community that I have. I appreciate all of you. And if you have any questions, if there's anything that we didn't cover today or you have questions about something that we did cover today, feel free to, if you're a star member, you can do a one-on-one tutoring session with me, 25-minute one, or you can just email me and I will let you know if I can answer the question via email or if it requires a reading or a session of some sort. So yeah, I'll do whatever I can to make things work with my own time. And yeah, hopefully this was helpful. If you have any feedback for me, feel free to email me and just write feedback in the subject line. Always happy to hear from you guys. And yeah, have a fantastic Thanksgiving if you're in America. And feel free to join me on December 6th for the Solidity. Oh yeah, that actually here this is a great reading that you guys could give as a gift for people. It's a pet reading for anybody who has pets, anybody who has cats or dogs. Great reading to see how you're connecting with your own animal. But yeah, also remember the Black Friday pre-sale and so remember that we have a podcast on December 6th where we're talking about what gifts are best for what sign. So feel free to join us for that. All right. So bye bye everybody. Have a good one and enjoy your holidays.